Cruz. Bonjour, good afternoon everyone. Donc, on va appeler la réunion à l'ordre. Madame la greffière.
Your Worship, we have an adoption of an agenda, l'adoption de l'ordre du jour. Il n'y a pas de changement.
There are no changes. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda? Conseiller Kingston, Conseiller Butler. Donc, on the question, is it a show of hands? Oui, donc en faveur. Motion carried. Merci.
The next would be adoption of minutes, les adoptions du procès verbal du 7 juillet.
So could I have a mover and a seconder for this? Conseiller Léger, Conseiller Bourgeois, seconded. Any questions? No? Donc, it's a show of hands again. Donc, levée de main. Merci. carried.
Next are declarations of a conflict of interest, les déclarations des conflits d'intérêts.
Are there any conflicts of interest? No.
No.
There are none.
New business, les affaires nouvelles. Le premier thème, c'est les trottoirs sur la rue Maine. René Lagacé, directeur d'ingénierie, est ici pour nous en discuter.
Bonjour, René.
Bonjour. Good afternoon, elected officials. I hope everyone's having a great summer so far. Here today to talk about brick sidewalks, and specifically the brick sidewalks on Main Street will be our focus today. Next slide, please. There we go. We're specifically here today because we're noticing that a lot of sections of our brick sidewalk are at the end of their service life. It's also worth mentioning that we did quite a few renewals throughout the years, and even those renewals don't seem to last the way we think they should last. There are certain sections that we've done 2 or 3 years ago, and after about a winter, we started to see some premature failures, some cracking, the deterioration on the surface. It's our professional judgment that there are materials out there that are more durable and more suitable for an application for sidewalks.
René, just swipe. The other one.
Thank you. In January of this year, if you recall, we had proposed to council a new streetscape for Westmoreland, which is currently under construction. And what we had came up with is a new concept for the sidewalks that would use paver stones or brick pavers that are similar quality as the ones that are on Downing Street. And just to give you an example, so this is the concept that was approved by council back in January, and today we are here to kind of extend that concept to Main Street, using the similar color palettes, but just a different look for Main Street, and we're looking for council's approval for that street concept for sidewalk on Main Street. We're using this block as an example. This is Main Street between Mechanic and Assumption Boulevard, right in front of the Marriott Inn, Residence Inn by Marriott. This is just an overview of the concept. Basically, it has 3 colors in the color palette. And we've brought some examples here right in front of you. If you can look just in front of you, Council. You'll see that the paver bricks are quite larger than the red bricks that we currently have on Main Street. They are quite thicker as well. So it's a material that's been used in similar applications. It would be a combination of 3 colors. The one in the middle, the beige, would be your main walk-in area. The gray would be an amenity strip that would be installed along the curb, as we can see here. And the brown, which is on your right-hand side, would be used as an accent color to kind of break the patterns, as you see on the picture here. And it's worth mentioning that the brown color that is on your right-hand side is the Petitcodiac River color. It's a custom-made color that was designed to match exactly the color of the Petitcodiac riverbanks. So quite a special touch, uniqueness to the concept we're trying to bring here in Moncton. If I go just back on the previous slide, we think there's enough room to install some trees, which is a win for us in this particular location. We'll be looking at whenever we have these kind of extra spaces that allows for the sidewalk to go through, but also for that additional space, to be filled with tree cells. So we want to try some new technology that will help kind of the trees grow in the urban environment, which is quite challenging for trees. A couple of examples here where we'd like to plant some trees as well, which is always a benefit for our downtown. Just another look here, as you can see, the gray again, kind of like that strip along the curb, and again, the beige would be your main walking area, with the Petitcodiac or the Fundy Brown being your accent color. We've noticed that the section that require the most repairs, or that require renewal, would be between Lute Street and Assumption Boulevard. There are certain sections on the outskirts that were done in the previous years, which are showing some early signs of failure, but are definitely in better shape than the section that's in between Assumption and Lute Street. And this is the section that we have the most patios, definitely. So in recognition of that, if we move forward with this renewal program, we would likely target the months of September, October, November for the installation. Just to kind of minimize the impact that this project could have on our patio season and also our festivals. And we do have an approved budget from our 2025 capital for $250,000 towards specifically brick sidewalk renewal on Main Street. And you'll see in future years, when we get to the capital works deliberations in the next few months, that we're proposing a budget of about $500,000 per year to kind of catch up, if you wish, on these sidewalk renewals. So really, the recommendation that is in front of you, Council, is for Council to adopt the concept that we have here for the sidewalk renewals for Main Street. Again, with a focus on the section between Lutz and Assumption Boulevard. And that concludes my presentation, and more than willing to answer any questions you may have.
Merci beaucoup, René. Conseiller Léger, do you wish to move the recommendation? Seconded by Conseiller Steves.
Une question.
Donc,
J'avais une question, oui.
comment? Oui, allez-y. Tu as une question.
Oui.
Excuse-moi.
Oh, merci. Merci, Madame la Ministre. Merci, René. Avec 250 000 $, combien de pieds carrés ou de mètres carrés que vous pensez pouvoir changer? Mm-hmm. Puis là, ça nous donnerait une idée sur combien de fois il faut répéter la demande afin de nous rendre de l'Assomption à la Lutz.
Oui, très bonne question. Pour l'instant, la section qu'on vous propose de faire, qui est devant le Marriott, qui est un bloc, on parle d'environ 150 mètres, puis c'est seulement d'un côté de la rue, on garde un estimé d'environ justement le 250 000 $ environ.
De l'Assomption au Marriott, juste
le bloc qui est là. Oui, avec okay. Le budget de 250 000 qui est déjà approuvé, on croit qu'on pourra faire cette section-là. Maintenant, c'est sûr que l'ajout des arbres peut être un peu plus coûteux aussi, donc il faut regarder à ça. C'est notre estimé pour l'instant, mais évidemment, lorsqu'on va aller en appel d'offres, c'est là qu'on va avoir les vrais prix. C'est pour ça qu'on aimerait commencer avec une section plus comme qu'on a ici, qui est assez courte, juste pour se donner une idée des prix. Puis, je voulais le mentionner aussi, c'est une section qui n'a pas de patio, pas de terrasse. Donc, on trouve que c'est un très bon projet pilote, si vous voulez. Donc, une fois si on va en appel d'offres cet automne, on pourra aller dès cet automne, là, on aura vraiment une bonne idée des coûts unitaires, puis on pourrait faire une projection sur le reste de la rue Main.
OK. And the process that'll be used is similar to Downing, where there's concrete poured, and then the bricks, or these better bricks, get placed on top of the concrete. And then are the curbs then granite curbs?
So appreciate the question because I did forget to mention that. But yes, there will be a concrete slab poured under the paver stones, similar to downing, so that it prevents the settlement.
Right.
What we're expecting for the curb is that to minimize costs, if the curb is at the right elevation, we would keep the granite curb there. And that's what we expect to do with this first pilot project, is that we think there's enough grading from the building towards the street. If we don't have to touch it, it's a great curb, why replace it? If we're in a situation such as Westmoreland, where we're doing a full reconstruction and the curb needs to be renewed, we're recommending going back to concrete curb, just because I've explained that in the past, but with granite curb, it's quite a premium, and most of the granite curb is actually buried, and you barely see your investment. So we do feel that concrete curb would provide better drainage for a better cost. But again, if we don't have to touch it, we would keep it that way. That would be the intent for Main Street, for the section that we're looking at redoing.
Is a concrete curb easier on equipment in terms of snow clearing and so on versus granite? Because granite's almost indestructible, but versus, concrete that get chipped and so on. And then it for all the money you put in, it breaks the bricks and then we don't necessarily get around to fixing chips and stuff. That's why, what would be nice would be to get a cost comparison. Sure. I really do. I mean, I would hope that we do this once and it's good for, what is the life expectancy of this, if I may ask?
Sure. When you look at from a manufacturing point of view, we're talking in the 50 years for these types of pavers.
Okay.
Proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Right. And so if you had 50 years on the product and then you have a granite curb, then we virtually almost can, except if a water main break or something, that is uncontrollable happens, we would get 50 years out of this. And I think that's why I think it would be nice to have that comparison so we make a one-time decision.
For sure. I'd like to add that the expected service life of a concrete sidewalk or concrete curb is about the same range, about the 50 years. Definitely granite as a material is quite durable, for sure, but there's definitely some challenges with putting it to the right elevation, the grading, the forming, and all of that. There's some challenges there as well.
Okay, I think it would be worth comparing, but then if we did decide to go with concrete, then to have an asset management plan so that, it does get addressed over the winter, something happens over the winter, there's a big chip, then that gets done, so on, so that they continue to look like a finished product and a welcoming product. Okay, thank you, merci.
Thank you.
Merci, conseiller Léger, conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame le maire. Merci, René. Pour moi, il n'y a pas de doute qu'on devrait refaire ça, là, parce que c'est une question d'après moi, sécurité publique. On a des personnes qui sont aveugles ou malvoyantes. On a des personnes qui sont en fauteuil roulant. Et ça cause des ennuis. J'essaie d'imaginer une personne aveugle qui ne voit pas une dalle qui est sortie ou une brique qui est sortie, va s'accrocher, va tomber à terre, puis se défigurer. Là, c'est pas aussi important peut-être que la police puis les incendies, mais nos rues et nos trottoirs existent pour la sécurité publique, d'abord et avant tout. Ça fait, moi, je suis d'accord avec. Première question, j'en ai 3 ou 4 toutes petites. Là. Je te l'ai peut-être dit, mais je m'en souviens pas. Le coût total, sur combien d'années par le temps qu'on ait tout réparé?
C'est une bonne question, puis on n'a pas, comme je l'ai mentionné, si on va en appel d'offres, on va vraiment avoir les coûts, parce qu'on n'a pas beaucoup de projets qui incluent ce genre de construction-là. Mais c'est une analyse qu'on pourrait vous faire avant les prochaines délibérations du budget. Comme ça, le conseil aurait une idée claire de où on s'en va. Notre focus a vraiment été de, OK, essayons d'arriver avec un concept qui pourrait être approuvé par tous, aller en appel d'offres, puis là, vraiment avoir des coûts réels. Mais on a aussi reçu des coûts pour le projet de Westmoreland qu'on pourrait extrapoler, puis regarder à ça. Donc, je me mets une note que ça va être sur notre tâche à faire avant d'avoir la conversation avec le conseil.
OK, mais pouvez-vous au moins préciser combien d'années vous prévoyez que ça va prendre? 3, 4, 5?
Oui, donc, il y a 2 façons de voir la chose. On peut y aller avec des gros projets qui vont avoir des gros impacts, mais une durée moins longue, où on peut faire des petits blocs, mais là, ça peut durer longtemps. Nous, on ne souhaite pas être devant, sur la rue Main pendant 10 ans à refaire cette section-là. Si vous voulez mon opinion professionnelle ou personnelle, ça serait un programme peut-être de 4 ans. Puis on ferait un côté de la rue à la fois pour justement qu'on n'impacte pas trop le secteur.
C'est ce que j'allais suggérer. C'est pourquoi vous ne feriez pas sur 2 ans, un côté nord, une année sud, l'autre année, puis là, ça serait fini, là, parce que les gens, il faut qu'ils se déplacent, puis ils ne veulent pas aller à un bloc à la fois, puis là, il faut qu'ils traversent un autre bloc à la fois, puis revenir à un autre bloc pendant 3 ou 4 ans. Là.
Le défi, c'est que nous, notre recommandation, c'est de ne pas commencer le projet, ces projets-là, si vous voulez, avant septembre. Peut-être même début septembre, c'est encore des belles saisons pour les terrasses. Donc, on n'a pas encore vraiment la bonne idée comment de production qu'on peut faire, comment d'installation qu'on peut faire en 1 mois, 2 mois, 3 mois. Donc, l'étaler sur 2 ans serait peut-être trop agressif. C'est quand même du travail qui prend longtemps. C'est méticuleux. On l'a vu sur la rue Downing, ça a pris quand même longtemps à faire. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'on pense que réalistiquement, un 4 ans, 2 années sur chaque côté pourrait être réaliste d'après nous. Mais le projet pilote qu'on propose va nous donner beaucoup de réponses par rapport au coût, par rapport à la productivité, la rapidité, etc.
OK. Je vais finir avec 3 suggestions. Ben après ça, vous en ferez ce que vous voudrez. Là. J'étais à Summerside en fin de semaine. Ils ont à peu près le même style, briques rouges, etc. Aux intersections de rue, au lieu d'être carré, il y a une sorte de juste l'intersection qui est courbe. Ça fait toute une beauté, puis ça garde mieux. Mais Deuxième suggestion, est-ce qu'on est capable d'incorporer une œuvre d'art, disons 3 pieds par 3 pieds, je sais pas, je suis pas artiste, là. Je peux pas imaginer quelqu'un qui travaille dans des pièces de ciment 3 pieds par 3 pieds, mais peut-être qu'il y aurait des artistes qui s'intéressaient, puis ça serait beau, sur chaque bloc, s'il y avait quelque chose, soit quelque chose d'historique sur Moncton ou création originale, abstraite d'un artiste, mais vous pouvez considérer si ça se fait ou ça se fait pas, là. Ça veut dire ça sauverait un 3 pieds, puis si jamais ça se défait, on peut le changer puis le refaire. Puis la troisième, c'est quelque chose que j'ai vu sur Facebook. C'est des constructions de ciment, puis ils intègrent des boules d'air ou de caoutchouc gonflable à l'intérieur, comme dans une grille. Au lieu d'avoir tout du ciment pendant 10 pouces ou 12 pouces, ils mettent des boules, puis là, le ciment couvre le reste. Je ne sais pas si ça marcherait dans notre climat, mais s'il y a assez de ciment autour de ces boules-là, ça réduit énormément les coûts, puis ça n'a aucun impact sur le ciment, sur le reste de la construction. À vous de considérer ça. Merci, Madame la maire. Merci, René.
Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. Conseiller Richard.
Merci, maire Esterio. Merci pour la présentation, Irénée. I appreciate the concrete base. I think that's a huge, it's going to help a lot in the future, keeping it stable, keeping easier maybe to replace a few bricks here and there if that happens. Anyways, we're doing both sides of the street at Marriott?
No, the pilot project would be just on the Marriott side, on the south side, yes.
Okay. And the 3 colors are nice. They look really good on
Thank
the
you.
pictures. Right there, too. With this year's, it's going to be a challenging budget, tax rate, possible increase. What would be the difference if we would go 1 color instead of 3?
There would not be really an impact. The cost really is in the material itself and the concrete slab, which is underneath the paver stones, which is more expensive than just putting the regular brick back. However, when you look at the life cycle, that's where there's definitely comparable, or even this one is more advantageous because we know what we're seeing out there for the red brick versus what we know what to expect here, but also like Downing is a good proof. We go walk Downing, which is more than 10 years, approximately 10 years old now, and sure you have discussed from the snow clearing, obviously that will happen, but other than that, it's in very, very solid condition. So price difference in the colors? No, none really. It's the material itself that has the difference in the cost itself.
Oh, that's great. I'm happy to hear that because the colors are great. They look really good. So
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Appreciate that. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, René. Avant d'aller au vote, j'aime beaucoup l'idée de travailler avec le secteur des arts, donc peut-être avec le comité des arts de la ville aussi. Donc,
Merci.
merci. Oh, conseiller Butler.
Oh, that's all right, that's all right. I'm married, I've been ignored before. Rennie, with this, you're asking us to, says the Moncton City Council direct administration to proceed with the design and tendering of future red sidewalks. My issue is that we're asking for $250,000 a year in the budget, but we really don't know what the cost is, the overall budget. Is there no way that, so did you want to start it this year?
Yes, thank you for the question. Since we have $250,000 that was approved in the 2025 budget, we could do a phase this fall. We didn't want to, start this early. Obviously, we have a lot of construction ongoing on Main Street right now, and we didn't want to kind of interfere with that. And also, again, our approach would be here to start in September, mid-September anyway. We don't want to rush this in the spring or in the summer. So option number one is to approve this concept and we move forward and try it out on that first block. Obviously, once we decide on the color palette, we'll want to continue it. Let's face it, it's a big decision on the aesthetics, and that's why we're here today, because it does involve the aesthetics of it. We can definitely come back to council with, as a follow-up, as an estimate of how much it would cost to do that entire section based on certain costs we received in the past, and we'll definitely have a better idea once we go out to tender, which will include only the sidewalk and the concrete slab underneath it, underneath the paver bricks. Yeah, that's an option to move forward with a pilot project, or we could wait until next spring to start this program. All the options are on the table here.
Well, when it comes to something like this, a project this big, I'm not so much for the color. I usually walk looking forward. I don't look down at my feet too much, so I'm sure there is, people like to look at it. It would look better. But my concern is still, it says administration to proceed with design and tendering a future, and we still don't have a cost. Like, we're taking an estimate of, so we got a budget of $250,000, but that was for last year. As you well know, everything goes up. I mean, if they put concrete in there, they also have to put the steel in there also to, so everything's gone up. So to me, I'd sooner have some more closer, how much is going to cost. Because, I think it's like Councillor Richard said, with the freeze of the assessments, property assessments, we're to go into great big projects where it's going to cost us, and this could overrun double. I'm not saying it is, but I think, is there no way that we can get a better costing, like close to what this is going to cost before we send it out or before we pass this? I'm just kind of a little like we're given a lot of tendering, put the tender out. So if companies start filling this out and wanting to put a price in.
Perhaps I can jump in here, Councillor. So every year, Council will approve a capital budget, which will include maintenance of roads and/or sidewalks on an ongoing basis. What administration is looking for is not additional monies to do the project on Main Street, but just the approval of the concept. So every year when we do get that capital budget, that includes portions of sidewalks and/or roads based on need and priority, that we would use the money to do this. So we're not looking for the additional budget for a 4-year project to do Main Street. Just saying, if council approves to this concept, it might take us a little bit longer because, again, the increase of 30% more additional cost for this. However, that as we approve projects on an ongoing basis, this would be the model, or this would be the concept, not the individual small bricks. So again, we're not seeking any additional monies. All we're trying to do is get the concept approved so that as we direct future decisions of council for fixing Main Street sidewalks, that this would be the concept that you would see. I don't know if that makes it clearer.
Well, you know, I hear what you're saying, but my issue is it still says tendering future. So how do we tender future when we don't know what the cost of this first one is? That's all I'm saying is, can we not get a cost, like if this first one in front of the Marriott? Like, how much is that going to cost us, that stretch? And when you come back, then we have an idea for future future tendering, how much, so we know how the length of that. So when you go to the next part of the sidewalk, how much it is, next part of the sidewalk, how much it is. It just seems like, you know, we're saying 250,000 we have in the budget, but we don't know that's the cost of that.
Yeah, I appreciate the concern. I guess, you know, and yes, we could definitely come up with a breakdown, an estimate of how that whole stretch would cost between Lutz and Assumption and provide the bigger picture. But the process we're following is similar to, I guess, other tendering where we ask for the budget for council based on previous costs, the best of our knowledge, and then we go out to tender with a cost estimate, but it's never the final cost until you close that tender, obviously. So this is somewhat of a similar approach, except I guess what's missing here is the bigger picture, the entire cost from the section between Lutz and Assumption is what I understand the concern is. But as far as the tendering process and how much cost estimate we have before going out to tender, that is really similar to all the road, water and sewer work that we're doing every year.
Merci. Elaine, did you wish to address the issue?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councilor Butler. That's exactly what I wanted to say. It's similar to our other processes. So if we're within budget, then the city manager would have the approval authority. If we are over budget, then we would come to council for the award, and we would need to find other funds to compensate for the difference. So you would have the opportunity to review there.
So what you're saying is if it goes over $250,000, you got to come back to us.
If we don't have enough, if it's over budget.
Well, the budget's $250,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Merci, conseillère Leblanc.
Oui. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres couleurs qu'on pourrait avoir? Parce qu'avoir du beige, là, ça va tourner peut-être en brun. Tu sais, parce que on met les pieds sur les blocs. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a un autre choix que ces trois-là?
Merci pour la question. Il y a sûrement d'autres types de couleurs. Nous, moi, je suis pas un expert en couleurs, donc je me suis vraiment retiré de ça. C'est pour ça qu'on a engagé la firme d'architectes Trace Planning qui nous a proposé la couleur que vous voyez là. Encore là, avec l'élément de, justement, la couleur de la rivière Petit-Codiac. Donc, je pense que si qu'on apporterait plusieurs couleurs, on aurait probablement plusieurs opinions différentes. Donc, la seule chose que je peux vous dire, c'est que nous, on s'est comme un peu retiré de ça. On a laissé les experts un peu parler dans le terme de qu'est-ce qui s'agencerait mieux avec la rue Main, avec la couleur des bâtiments aussi. Donc là, vous voyez qu'il y a beaucoup moins de rouge qu'on a aujourd'hui. Je pense en reconnaissance aussi qu'il y a beaucoup de bâtiments sur la rue Main qui a déjà des briques rouges. Donc, je pense qu'on voulait comme avoir une couleur qui se différencie un peu aussi des bâtiments. Mais il y a sûrement d'autres couleurs qui existent dans l'industrie, évidemment, oui.
Merci.
Merci.
Merci, conseillère Leblanc. Pas d'autres questions? We will go to the vote. It's an electronic vote.
We see the results.
Merci. Motion carried.
Thank you. And just a note, I'll be back for the breaks after the presentation. This is 3 trips for me, so they're quite heavy, quite durable. Okay, thank you.
Madame Lagraffière.
Yes. Oops, yes. Next is requests from an ad hoc official language advisory committee, and I believe that the Director of Corporate Communications, Aloma Jardim, will be leading this.
Bonjour, Aloma.
Bonjour. Bon, on vient vous demander pour approuver un comité consultatif spécial sur les langues officielles. Juste pour vous donner un peu de contexte. Oh. Ah, là. On a une politique sur les langues officielles depuis 1991 à la ville de Moncton. La dernière révision était en 2018. On a aussi eu un rapport bilinguisme à Moncton qui a été déposé en 2016. And both of those things are up, kind of due for a review, and we would love to have a committee to help us with that work. We think that would really add some good value, just to do those 2 things. So it would be, and that's why we're asking for an ad hoc committee. So his work would be about 8 months long to advise on the revision of the official languages policy. And to also advise on the development of an action plan to support and promote bilingualism in Moncton. Voyons. Là. OK. L'échéancier pour ce projet-là, on aimerait, si vous approuvez le comité aujourd'hui, on aimerait faire l'appel des candidatures en août. On commencerait le travail du comité en septembre et on passerait l'automne à regarder le mise à jour de la politique sur les langues officielles. Entre-temps, en même temps, on commencera à regarder le rapport bilinguisme à Moncton et de développer un plan d'action qui sera déposé au Conseil en avril 2026. So, je prendrai les questions.
Merci, Aloma. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Oui, je sais. Excuse. Donc, est-ce que le conseiller Bourgeois, vous voulez proposer la motion? We're going to come back, Aloma. Donc, oui, conseiller Bourgeois?
Oui, mais j'ai des questions.
OK, c'est beau. Donc, allez-y, conseiller Bourgeois.
Que ça prend quelqu'un pour appuyer?
Le conseiller Légère.
Légère, OK.
Oui.
C'est ça, alors, pas de-
C'est beau. Allez-y.
OK. Merci beaucoup, Madame la maire. Merci beaucoup, Aloma. Je suis très en faveur. Ça fait 4 ans que je demande pour ça. Ça fait, pour une raison ou une autre, nous voici enfin. Ça fait, c'est beau. J'ai juste deux questions, je pense. La première, c'est est-ce que dans cette révision-là, c'est pas juste la politique sur les langues officielles, mais est-ce que ça inclut l'affichage commercial?
Oui, je crois que ça fait partie.
Ça fait partie?
de la liste, ça
OK.
fait partie du rapport de bilinguisme à Moncton. Alors, est-ce que c'est dans le politique aussi? Non. Non, c'est pas inclus dans le politique même, mais c'était dans une partie du rapport bilinguisme à Moncton.
C'est ça.
Alors, ça fait partie du.
Je crois qu'on doit aller au-delà de juste la politique, si ça exclut l'affichage bilingue. Puis l'autre argument que je fais depuis quelques années, c'est on a une question de patrimoine. On valorise le patrimoine loyaliste. Je suis à 101% d'accord avec ça, surtout avec Trites House puis Williams House. C'est beau. On aurait la possibilité de valoriser le patrimoine acadien qui était ici avant. Ce patrimoine-là, ça fait 4 siècles qu'il y a une présence quasiment, au moins 3 siècles qu'il y a une présence acadienne ici. Présence des Mi'kmaq aussi. Ça mais c'est pas langues officielles. Là. Mais si au moins on peut reconnaître pas juste les 2 langues, mais les 2 communautés. Une langue ne sert à rien d'autre qu'à communiquer, mais c'est aussi le ciment qui cimente tous les briques de culture, patrimoine, spectacle, tout ce que ça veut dire. Mais essentiellement, ce serait de faire la révision à partir du commun des mortels. Non pas à partir de la corporation, mais le commun des mortels. Comment est-ce qu'un francophone ou une francophone qui est comme minorité, il y a égalité en principe, là, mais c'est pas nécessairement une égalité réelle parce que c'est souvent les francophones qui sont pas capables de se faire servir en français. Rares exceptions, mais ça existe. Moi, je connais pas encore d'anglophone qui n'a pas pu se faire servir en anglais à la ville de Moncton. Mais je connais des francophones qui n'ont pas pu se faire servir en français. Ça fait, il y a une question de linguistique, je suis d'accord, mais il y a aussi comment est-ce qu'on fait pour se dire, hey, la ville de Moncton est vraiment bilingue, biculturelle, je suis francophone, je suis capable de grandir, de naître à l'hôpital du Mont ou l'hôpital anglais et tout, là, parce qu'ils ont des services bilingues. Je peux mourir puis me faire enterrer dans un cimetière puis inhumé dans une maison funéraire en français aussi. Ça fait du berceau jusqu'au tombeau. Comment est-ce qu'on fait pour vivre en français à Moncton ici? Puis là, qu'est-ce qui est le rôle de la ville de Moncton par rapport à ça? Fait, c'est une suggestion que je vous fais. Merci beaucoup pour votre considération. Mais il y a une préoccupation que j'ai. Je ne sais pas qui ce qui a inventé cette chose-là, dans le paragraphe F, sous operational, là. Ça dit que la présidence du comité aurait l'habilité de faire des résolutions, de proposer des résolutions. J'ai jamais vu ça avant, mais c'est possible que ça existe. Donc, proposer ou appuyer une résolution. Normalement, la présidence est neutre et impartial et veut s'assurer que le vote qui vient est pas biaisé. Mais si la présidence propose ou appuie, ça serait un petit peu ridicule qu'elle proposerait, puis après ça, présiderait si jamais il y avait un débat ou une discussion houleuse à l'intérieur du comité, elle serait biaisée, cette présidence-là. Ça fait... Pouvez-vous m'expliquer pourquoi vous donnez ce pouvoir-là à la présidence?
Bon, c'était basé sur ce qui était dans la politique sur les agences, les conseils et les comités. Mais bien sûr, si vous n'êtes pas d'accord, on pourrait le changer.
Moi, je sais pas que je suis pas d'accord, mais je veux prévenir des problèmes. Je pense pas qu'il y en aura, mais de temps en temps, on se fait surprendre par quelque chose, puis on se dit, ben, OK, si la maire, par exemple, aujourd'hui disait, en partant, moi, je suis d'accord avec cette politique-là, bon, maintenant, j'ouvre le débat ou la discussion, elle se met dans un coin qui serait peut-être pas confortable. Mais en tout cas, je soulève ça, il faudra faire attention pour éviter ça. Mais je vous fais confiance si vous pensez que ça va marcher. C'est beau. Merci. Merci, Madame le maire.
Conseiller Bourgeois, est-ce qu'il y a d'autres... Ah, conseiller Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Bourgeois on this one, regards to, you don't want to get into a situation when you're trying to have something passed. But one thing I don't maybe agree with is that only one member of council. Why did you just come up with one member council? Because why I say is that we have a number of councillors that are Acadian, and we have just 2 or 3 that are English. So it's good that both sides are represented on council at all times.
Again, we were following the ABCC policy, and it did say that if there were less than 10 members in the committee, that only one member of council would be appointed. But again, it's a policy, so we're trying to follow it. But if council would prefer that something different, we're happy to change the terms of reference.
And also too with the 3 to 6 citizens, like, do we know it's going to be 3 or do we know
Yeah,
it's going to be 6?
that's
Makes quite a difference.
That is a fair question. We wanted to make sure that there was a minimum of 3, but we didn't want to leave the door open that if we got some really great applications, we didn't want to say, well, we're only going to cut it off at 3 and not take these other 2 or 3 really great people. So it will depend a little bit on what kind of applications we get to the committee, but we did want to build in a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Merci, conseiller Butler. There are no other questions. We do have a motion that's been moved and seconded, so we will go to electronic vote. Pardon?
So what I was asking is regards to 2 members of council instead of 1. Is that possible, or I just don't...
It would be the will of council if you want.
I'm sorry?
It would be the will of council if you want to add a member of council. It's just the politic does state that under.
I think when the policy was put together and they never thought of it in this terms, this is a very important, and I think the both languages have to be represented.
I agree with Councillor Butler on this, and I think it would be good to have two councillors on the committee.
We have no problem with
Yeah.
that. We actually originally were going to put two, but then noticed that the policy said only one, so we would have no problem with having two.
So how do we proceed now?
So I don't think it really needs to change the recommendation. The recommendation is to approve the establishment of the ad hoc committee. We'll take direction that, from council stating that they would want equal representation on the committee, and we'll make sure that that occurs. But from the recommendation that's before us, it's the establishment of the ad hoc committee, so nothing needs to change from that recommendation.
Merci, Monsieur Gérard.
Can we see the results, please?
Motion carried unanimously. Merci, Madame la Greffière.
Yes, moving along. Moncton Coliseum community bookings, and I believe Shane Porter is coming down and Danielle Tracy. I was going to say Isabel can introduce the topic. Oh, she found them. They're there. Isabel, did you want to introduce it or just go directly to Shane? Okay.
Bonjour, Shane.
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks for having us today. Sorry, I'll just jump right in. Danielle is here with us as well to help out and answer any specific questions if you have any on the rules and regulations. I guess the purpose today, although it's spelled out very well, I think here in the CRF, but the purpose is to share these new rules and regulations or guidelines, I guess, for community use of the Coliseum. And when we say community use, you know, this could be cultural events, it could be some types of sporting events. There's just some struggles that we're facing with some of this stuff. And not all of these rules that we're talking about in this document are actually new to the building. In fact, our trade clients, you know, have been working with these rules for quite a long time. These are things that we're very clear on when we sit down with people about booking the Coliseum. But, you know, because some of these rules are not being followed, we really want to be upfront, put them in writing, and really push this hard because we're running into some struggles. Just a little bit of background. Obviously, we were before council a few years ago with the repurposing plan for the Coliseum. And at that time, council approved the plan in stating that trade shows, consumer shows, those types of events were top priority of the Coliseum, obviously, but closely followed by ice users on the Coliseum side. And we also did include community events and other sporting events at the time as time is available or time is allowed. So that has always been part of the mandate. That isn't changing. We're running into some manpower issues. We're running into some financial issues with people not adhering to some rules. So we just want to be clear on that. Obviously, the community is growing, so we're getting more and more and more requests for community events and cultural events, sporting events in that facility, which is a good problem to have, but we're also getting busier and busier on the trade show side. So, you know, we don't always have the dates that people are looking for, but we try to slot people in as much and as often as possible. So just quickly, some of the issues that we're having, you know, we talk a little bit in the CRF about setup needs and things like that. A lot of these groups are coming in and they don't have the experience of doing proper floor plans. It is a little more time consuming, a little more cumbersome, but that's not the issue. It's some of the blatant disregard that I feel we need to address. One of them being food and beverage. Food and beverage is highlighted in here for a reason. We've learned through our network with trade shows in the country that, there's some couple of examples of like facilities in the West Coast, for example, that had been allowing outside food and beverage. And they're going through lawsuits and litigation because of outbreaks, things like that. So we're not just trying to be mean, we're trying to actually, do our due diligence and make sure that we're keeping things safe in a public facility. Things like that. Also, staffing is another one that's highlighted. We've got some groups that are, staying past the agreed to times, things like that, which is causing staffing issues. We have to keep people on. We currently do not have a midnight to 8 shift at the Coliseum, but I can give you examples of events that are happening where they're not stopping at midnight. They're going to 2, 3, 4 in the morning, which means we're keeping people on all night, which affects our staffing, for the next few days, things like that. So, and I guess, I think all of you got the attachment as well, that kind of maps out what we're trying to put in everybody's hands prior to booking. Really, the big things are food and beverage, like I mentioned, space availability. We're going based on a priority that refers to the repurposing plan. This is not new. We're asking people to put things like damage deposits or down payments down, because we're struggling sometimes after the fact when we do incur extra costs to get some of these groups to actually pay for some of those incurred costs. And then there are a few others like security. Over a certain size event, we have to really push that, even not just for the trade show promoters, but also for the community events. If you're over a certain size, you need need security personnel, you need first responders, things like that. Again, not new, but we're really wanting to push this hard. And I guess the reason for coming before council today is I'm really asking for council's support on this because, again, these aren't new, but we will get people that are pushing back a little bit. And some of the tendency is when they're told no, or they're told they have to follow something, inevitably they end up coming to certain individual counselors and trying to plead the case, if you will. So we kind of wanted to get ahead of it, present this to you, and see if you had any questions or any feedback. So I think that's it.
Merci beaucoup,
Thank you.
Shane. Conseiller Kingston.
Merci, Madame Madas. It's for information purposes only, Shane, but really it's a great, solid step forward on our 52-year-old other jewel in town, the Coliseum. I think you can eat off the floor. It's so clean in there, as the walkers know, and it's an amazing building still. I love the fact that the rentals are going to be not permitted in the ice area. As you know from previous, the tear downs were so quick and the ice would be bad the next day, on and on over the last year. So that's great that ABC can only be, will not include the ice service. And the fact that Legends becomes our sole supplier, which excellent food, they're a tremendous facility in the Coliseum, and great to see they become the sole supplier, as we know, at the Coliseum. So the tear downs and the down payments are great amendments too, and I think it's a positive step forward for our amazing Coliseum. Thank you, Shane. Merci.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Merci, Madame Madas.
Merci, conseiller Kingston, conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la maire. Merci, Shane, pour avoir amené ça ici devant nous. Je suis confus un petit peu à savoir c'est quoi notre rôle. You want support in the CRF, it's for information purpose only. My question is really one of legal, where the boundary is. Is this a council decision that we need to approve? Or is this something that staff's bailiwick and we only need to be informed?
This is for information purposes only, but I think the recognition by Shane that you will inevitably, if this gets challenged by members or users of the facility, you would get calls. So I think that when Shane says that he's looking for your support, he's hoping that council would then appreciate the guidelines that are there and would refer the users back to the administration here to explain.
But do we need to approve it?
No, you do not. It's for information purposes only.
Okay.
Thank you,
When I
Mr.
get the
CA.
call, what do I do? You say, I'm sorry, I had no hand in this. It seemed to make sense to me, and people will come up with exceptions to the rule or try to slide their project through, as you say.
Yep.
I don't like to be able to say, well, talk to Shane.
No, I know, but from a facility management situation, it is much preferred if you can do that. And I know it's difficult to do that at the time, but, for example, if somebody calls and they have an issue at the Avenir Center, when we have a management company that's in place, the first thing I do is refer them to said management company and to, the GM of the building. So, we can work out most of these things. I guess I threw that in as a little personal plug, that if you could help support, that would be a really big thing, because, people are going to try their hand, and they're going to do it many different ways.
Yeah,
That's
but
all.
I do you want me to pass the buck?
I think on this one, I wouldn't use those words, but essentially, yeah, if you could refer them back to us, that would be helpful.
Okay. I don't have any major problem with the document. I do have two questions, though, if you don't mind answering. Could you explain in the space availability and bookings section, the first paragraph, there's the third bullet says, bookings will not be made more than 1 year in advance to ensure the Coliseum schedule remains open to trade and exhibition. So could you explain a little bit why?
We do have some community groups that will try and book many years in advance. Like, for example, if they do an event and it goes well, they may say, hey, I'd like to book it for the next 5 years. In not allowing that, we're not saying that we wouldn't host them for the next 5 years, but we are saying that, we need time sometimes to digest our calendar a little bit. The Coliseum is extremely busy with some of these trade events and various other types of events that are bringing outsiders into the community and spending money, which is, top priority as far as the repurposing plan goes. So basically what we're saying is we're forcing that conversation to happen each year, as opposed to just doing a blanket booking for a number of years, and then we're stuck in a situation where we don't have flexibility.
Okay.
So we're not saying no, we're just saying we need to force that conversation more often.
Okay, so let's take an example of the boat show.
Yeah.
It's been here for I don't know how many years. It probably, hopefully, will be here for many more. But-
Absolutely.
So the organizers of that boat show would have to, every year, renew their request?
No, we will do bookings for trade shows in advance.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do multi-year bookings on trade because that is the priority of the facility.
Okay, perfect. My second question was about, it doesn't appear, but I know what I'm referring to, food beverages. There will be no cooking on the premises, and outside food and beverage are not permitted on the premises. Does on the premises mean just the Coliseum, or does it also include the parking?
It also includes the parking when you're bringing food into the facility. If the event is being held inside the facility, we've had both situations in the past where people have tried to cook inside the facility, which is as Conrad could speak to, that's
Dangerous.
its own challenges.
Dangerous, yeah.
But also doing food prep under tents in a parking lot is also very challenging and something that we have to be very careful on. So we included the premises for that reason. We're really worried about them bringing outside food and beverage into the facility.
I agree, and I read that in the CRF, but why should we specify it that it's not just inside, on the premises does not mean strictly inside the Coliseum, but also includes the parking lot?
Yeah, it's the workaround that people have been trying to do with the cooking on the grounds and then bringing it into the facility. We just want to be very clear that you can't do either or. You can't be prepping food in a parking lot to then bring in. If we were saying just inside the building, that's one thing, but we've run into a number of issues with public health, with fire, with people trying to cook in the parking lot and then bring stuff in. So we're just trying to cover it all off, that's all.
Right, but my point, we're
can
saying the
change the
same
wording a
thing,
bit, but yeah.
it's not clear. You said you want it to be clear. I don't think it's clear. If I was an organization wanting to rent the facility, then when you say on the premises,
Yep.
that it includes the parking lot. Maybe it's me, maybe for you, on the premises is clear that it involves the parking lot.
Sure.
But I would suggest that you had a little bullet there, premises means both inside the Coliseum and in the parking
We
area.
can certainly do that.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. Conseiller Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Shane, and I know exactly what you're talking about. So my thought would be is that because of, we're talking about this now and in the fall, and then we're looking at next spring, within a year of new council coming on, or an election anyway, I would maybe hope that maybe sometime in the fall you could bring this all back, change it a little about the parking lot and things like that. But make it a recommendation, so it doesn't have to fall back on staff. Council has made that decision, and that's the way it's going to be. So kind of relying on that you've got to be the bad guy, the staff all the time. We're the ones that'll make that decision, shut it down, and stop it. And, I agree with all your points. Just clear up a little bit, like Daniel said about the premise, because I know exactly what you're talking about also, the cooking outside and bringing it in. So I think that myself personally, I'll vote in favor today, but I would think sometimes in the fall, before the fall, maybe you and the CIO could get together and we could come up with a plan to just shut this down, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's done, and council will take it.
No, we can certainly have that discussion, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Crossman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Shane, thanks for the presentation. Going through the document over the weekend on the rules and regulations part, I'll start there. I noticed in one of them you say that the Coliseum closes and must be cleared by 12 p.m. I'm assuming you mean 12 a.m.?
We're meeting 12 a.m., yes. We can
Okay,
tweak that.
okay. I highlighted that, just wanted to make sure that change was there.
Yes, midnight.
Perfect, yeah, because it just didn't, you said everybody cleared out by 11, and then they're there till noon.
We didn't mean lunchtime.
Yeah.
Great point.
Perfect, okay, good. Another one is alcohol is present. They need, or whoever's renting the space needs to have an alcohol permit, right? A liquor license or something along that line?
If it's going through Legends, then we are covered under an existing license, and that's obviously our preference. Now,
Okay.
there are certain examples like wine show where we do suspend our license and the show promoter brings one in, but other than that, beer festival might be another example, but other than that, that's part of the reason for the food and beverage being so important. We need that control, and we're happy to provide the service, and it's much cleaner that way.
Okay, good, yeah, that was the reason why I brought it up. I wanted to make sure we were clear on that. And you did talk about, and Councillor Bourgeois talked about it booking more than 1 year in advance. But I mean, we're also talking, this doesn't affect youth groups that are going in and playing ice hockey. The one that really sticks out for me would be the Remembrance Day service, which we know happens every year,
Yes.
right? So I mean, this is something that, I'm assuming you use some sort of calendar system,
We do.
and everything is tracked and plugged in, and then you can go from there. Would that be
And that one is
reasonable?
one that we consider a grandfathered event.
Okay, good.
We will never turn away the veterans. We will always do that event.
Okay, good,
So,
great.
yeah, no, there are obvious exceptions that are always in our calendar and that roll forward.
Yeah.
We're talking about, specifically some of these community or sporting events that are popping up. We're not talking about ice rentals. There's a whole process for that, so.
Exactly. Okay, good. Great. Thank you, Your Worship. That's all I have.
Merci, Conseiller Crossman. Conseiller Steves.
Thank you, Shane. Yeah, there must be some serious issues for you to come to us, for sure, and trying to read between the lines. Councillor Butler says he fully understands. I don't fully understand, but I'm making some assumptions. You said that there's some additional fees that apply if tear down is needed the following day. I'm just real curious, are there penalties and additional fees that have been applied for people not leaving the premises on time? You're giving us an extreme example of midnight and them staying till 3 or 4.
Yep.
It sounds ridiculous to me that that's being allowed. Can you just elaborate about that?
It's one of those things, and it hasn't just happened the one time. I know it sounds like an extreme example, but it does actually happen more often than you think. It could even be a wedding booking for as another example, when we have an agreed upon time. So we have staff scheduled according to those times, and people are having a great time, and they say, oh, we're not ready to leave yet. So staff that are on site, keep in mind, it's not myself on site normally. It's not Danielle as the coordinator that's on site. It's local 51 staff who are waiting to clean up. It's kitchen staff. It's things like that. And I guess we want to ensure that these rules are adhered to. So we if it takes putting large deposits in place, and it takes things like that to force this issue, then we're totally prepared to do that.
So that isn't being done currently?
We've had some people that have been very kind in the past to their own detriment, and we need to stop that. That's the way I would put it. We have staff that are allowing things and just staying that extra hour.
Sure.
Which turns into 2, things like that. And, it's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the taxpayer either, because ultimately, if we're charging somebody a not-for-profit rate, we're not covering costs very well at that moment. So to add all these extra charges and then not be able to collect, that's not a good option either.
Sure.
But at the same time, we've got staff that are being very sensitive. We don't want community groups to not be able to use a facility. We don't want to outlaw community use, but we need those rules to be followed in order to make it work for everyone.
So there's some internal systems too that need to be worked on. Then
Absolutely, this is a part of
it's
that.
not 100% blame on other groups for
Oh,
sure.
no,
It's
definitely not.
Yeah.
People will try their hand and they'll try things, but it's up to us to enforce it. So I guess today what I'm asking is, when we start enforcing, inevitably we will have some people that will be upset, and they may call on a counselor. So we just wanted you to be aware of the situation. We're not trying to be mean. We're not trying to push community groups out of the Coliseum. We're just trying to make sure that, we're putting our best foot forward and we're capturing some of these additional costs or stopping it from happening.
We've had some practice of people being upset. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, conseiller Steves. Conseiller Richard.
Merci, Maire Thériault. Thanks for the presentation, the information. You gave me something to read. You're in front of me, so I might as well ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Are these in effect now?
Like I said at the beginning, most of these are not new, but the way we're presenting them might be a little new. So before you can sign a contract with us, we want people to sign off on some of these things. A lot of it was done through meetings in the past, and things were verbalized, but we really need to get them in writing and get people to sign on them now so that we can kind of enforce should they not be followed.
So the copy,
So we're going to be a lot more strict, I guess, is what we're trying to say.
which is good. So the document that we have in front of us,
Will be
Will be.
polished up and go into effect.
on the web.
Siri wanted to put her words in too. Can you elaborate on the mention of first responders and security throughout the event? Depending on the event, you've got two first.
I found this on the web.
Really?
I want to put word.
Quite sensitive. Okay, so elaborate on the mention of the first responders, security throughout the event. You're saying 2 first responders might not be, I'm thinking that 2 first responders might not be enough in certain events. So what's the number? How, how many people and at
We're
what
probably
point do
going to
you need how
massage
many?
that one a little bit. That one might take a little more work. For example, if it was, I'm just throwing this out there, if it was a volleyball event, we often have some of these groups coming in saying, I have a friend who can do my medical coverage, so I don't need to use your services, things like that. We're going to be a lot more strict on some of those things. A parent volunteer is not a first responder, even if they do that in their day job. So we're going to insist that people use the contracted staff that we use for all the trade events into some of these community events. And that's going to be a change for some people, but that is the safer approach, for sure.
And you're not saying that they're providing this,
They're going to pay for it.
but it's not mentioned in the document,
Yeah,
right?
like I said, we will tweak this document a little bit when we put it into full use. But a lot of these things are not new. We're just going to be a lot more stringent on how it's applied.
And I'm glad you just said that again, because I would have liked to have a copy of the old one to compare to the new one, just to see the change, but, no, appreciate it. Merci.
Thank you.
Merci, conseiller Richard. Conseiller Léger.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Thanks, Shane. Just a couple things. Just to continue, I guess, on what Councillor Richard just mentioned, it might be beneficial to have that broken out in terms of, is it by the number of participants, and then have that clearly defined. It's 2 people up to a minimum of this amount, so on.
I think that's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to lean into some of the service providers a little bit to help us on some of those numbers.
Right, for both the first
I don't want it to be
responders and
overkill,
security.
but I don't want it
Right.
to be under as well. So
Yeah, I think the clearer it can be, then the less there is for discussion. Because
Correct.
one could say, well, just do it this time and so on. I wanted to ask how come it mentions that we understand no sooner than a year prior to the event, but no later than 6 months prior to the event date. If this is a new event, and let's say it was 4 months prior, does that mean that they absolutely cannot go? And then
I think we would still work
that's your gray zone.
I think we would still work with them.
Okay.
It's just we're trying to promote that they get it in well in advance. Some of these groups, for them, it's the first time doing a floor plan. So there's a lot of massaging that has to happen,
Okay.
that we can help with because we're very familiar on staff with how the building works and how things flow and things like that. But, it's again, one of those situations where I don't want Danielle or somebody else on staff to have to be doing this 2 days before an event or even
Right.
2 weeks before an event. Their schedule might not allow for that. So we're trying to get it in early. We're just promoting trying to get it in early.
Okay. And I think, the more is in the document, the less there is for discussion. And I think, our role is really, as long as it's there, it's a management issue. And so, but clarity is really important because
Right.
it's when it's not clear that the gray area will show up. And that's when, we'll get phone calls and so on.
Totally agree. And this is going to be a bit of a living document for a while. As we get into next season, we may have some other things that, we may have to tweak and things like that. But I guess the point is we really don't want to put staff in these awkward situations.
And this will be available on your website so people can go look at it and they know exactly what it is that
Absolutely.
the expectation is. Okay.
Yes.
No, and that's great. And I think that, good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Legend. Before I go to Conseiller Bourgeois, is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who would like to do so? If not, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Maire. Un once de prévention vaut une livre de remède. How can we prevent issues arising, like Councillor Steves? What is the communications plan? How are we going to get ahead of the curve on this one to make sure that it's all clear? There is a change. Is it just a public service announcement? What do you think?
I mean, we can certainly talk to comms about that, but I think getting it on the website, to Councillor Legier's point, I think is step one. I think the user groups that we've been working with for the last few years on some of these things, we can directly send that to them.
I was going to suggest.
I know, for example, one of these groups in question just had a site visit, last week. So Danielle's already been prepping them for what is to come and that this will be going directly to their inbox. So the plan was to give it enough time that we can, prep people for what the changes are going to be and then push it directly to these groups and then for everybody to follow. We need them to sign on these rules before they can enter the building.
Okay, I think most groups will be repeats, but
Yep.
not everybody gets married every year.
Correct.
So you'll have somebody, well, my cousin got married 3 years ago, and, that kind of issue. So if we can at least minimize the backlash,
Absolutely.
if any,
Yep.
that'd be great. Thank you. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci, Monsieur le Conseiller. There is no motion on this, so thank you, Shane.
Thank you very much.
Merci.
The next item is the June 30th financial statements, and I believe that our CFO is going to take this.
Bonjour, Jacques.
Bonjour. All right, thank you, members of council. We'll quickly go through our mid-year financial statement position. Starting in June, it's normally the time where we can better start to see where we're at, snow's done. Some of the summer projects have started or have gone out to market or so on, and we can start projecting to year end, although there's still 6 months left in the year. So on the first page of the appendix of the statement, we have just an overview of our general fund and how it has varied month over month. If we move to the next page, on our general fund operations as of now, we are in a surplus position of $900,000, of approximately $900,000. Our revenues are better than budget by approximately $1.2 million, and our expenses are worse than budget by approximately $280,000. On the revenue side, the things I would like to highlight a little bit, so in sustainable growth and development, our building permit revenues are better than budget by $1.1 million. The main contributor to that is the DFO Science Center that was approved in January, so that we're seeing a lot of positives on that. A little bit more on the negative side, so we have our Kodiak Transpo, $415,000, worse than budget, but again, would not get too worried on that as of now. Things can turn around. There are timing issues in our budget or so on, so there could be timing issues, so I think we're still okay. Under the community services side, you will see a $583,000 better than budget. The venues, which would mostly be the Coliseum operation, $552,000 better than budget, but you will see on the expense side, there's an offset that kind of brings that to a break-even position. So for revenues, that's what I would like to highlight. On the expense side, you will see a lot of the corporate services areas, the one more office workers or so on, we see positives, whether it be governance and corporate management, corporate services, finance services, or so on. These are the areas, again, when we have vacancies, normally we will see salary slippage, and it creates positive financial results in those areas. We budget, when we do our budget, we budget for that slippage in one area. We budget it under the finance services area under other admin. So that's why, because we don't know who will leave during the year. So our other admin is normally $600,000 worse than budget at the end of the year, just because that's where we budget our slippage for the year. On the expense side, the other things worth to mention, so under the community services, again, this is where we see the offset from the venues account, so paying attention to that. And in protective services, as of now, $809,000 worse than budget. Most of that comes from fire, but there is some timing in there as well from fire, so I think we'll be okay once we get So overall, there's some ups and downs, but overall, we're $902,000 better than budget as of now. As you can see on the expense side, we had $123 million budgeted, so again, it's less than 1% overall of where we're at, and we're projecting to the end of the year, and again, the projections you'll see for the general operating fund is at a $204,000 worse than budget, but if you were to ask me personally to comment, I think it would be we'd be better than that. It's just when our financial analysts and specialists go out to the departments, they say, "Oh no, we're going to spend that," or so on. But normally, sometimes it's hard to do. Even if you think you can do it by the end of the year, it doesn't necessarily occur. If we move to the next page on the utility fund, we are currently in $155,000 better than budget. Normally at this time of the year, if we look at historical trends, we're a little bit better off than that. But we've seen some water breaks and things like that. There could also be some timings, but we're not concerned, and we believe that by the end of the year, things will realign. For some of the things as well, we utilize the same workforce for the general fund and the utility fund. So when they work more on one fund, if they work more on utility, it provides savings in the operationals, which we see on the previous page. So overall, we're pretty good. And then we've also attached the purchase acquisition report. So those are the ones for the operating fund from $75,000 to $500,000. And the capital expenses from $75,000 to $5 million. We've attached those as well, and we can answer questions. We've attached the ones from April, May, and June. So that is it for my presentation, but happy to answer some questions if there are any. Thank you.
Merci, Jacques. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Conseiller Richard.
Merci, Mme Asterio. Merci, Jacques. Beaucoup de nombres encore. C'est beau de voir tous ces nombres-là. I appreciated the comment of 3 quotes obtained by department on the rooftop air conditioning units at the Coliseum. traveling seed tree care, we had just quotes obtained by the department. Having that note saying 3 quotes obtained by the department is just a better feel.
Yep. No, I can note that. I will speak to the purchasing team. Sometimes you can get 3 quotes because sometimes there's not necessarily 3 vendors that would be there. I'm not saying that's the case for this one, but I will make sure that becomes more clear in the future.
Okay, because it just says quotes obtained by the department, so just clarification on it.
Yep,
Future would be
absolutely.
nice.
Yep.
C'est tout, merci beaucoup.
Merci, conseiller Richard, conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci, Madame la maire. Merci, Jacques. Excellente présentation. 2 ou 3 questions. La première, c'est, selon ces données, pouvez-vous estimer le surplus à la fin de l'année?
Si le conseil approuve, s'il n'y a pas quelque chose de majeur que le conseil approuve d'ici à la fin de l'année, puis c'est juste les opérations normales, puis c'est les choses normales, moi, personnellement, je pense que notre surplus sera au-delà d'1 million. Je serai au moins 1 million. Mais encore, c'est pas nécessairement de mon contrôle de... c'est ce que je veux dire, là.
Par des tempêtes de neige au mois de novembre et décembre.
Mais on devrait pouvoir continuer. Parce que d'habitude, ce qu'on voit, on voit les mois de mai, juin. Traditionnellement, il y a beaucoup de dépenses. Puis ensuite, pendant l'été, les gens s'en vont en vacances, puis on voit un ralenti un petit peu sur les dépenses. Puis aussi, dans nos résultats qu'on vous rapporte aujourd'hui, on a les open POs. Donc, les achats qu'on n'a pas nécessairement encore faits, mais on pense qu'on va aller de l'avant avec une dépense. Donc, moi, je dirais au moins 1 million.
OK. On va dire 1 million, même 1,5 million pour rêver en couleur, là. Si à la fin de l'année, on avait 1,5 million, puis là, on sait que la province s'en vient là, avec un gel des évaluations foncières qui va avoir un impact de, je sais pas, 4-5 millions de dollars de moins de revenus qu'on devrait avoir. Donc, je suis pas sûr que la province a compris l'erreur de sa réflexion. Ils veulent plaire les contribuables, puis c'est bien, mais les contribuables ici à Moncton auront peut-être besoin de payer plus pour avoir les mêmes services si on a moins de revenus qui rentrent. Ça fait ça, on dirait que la province a oublié d'expliquer ça, là. Mais est-ce qu'on est capable, je crois que la réponse est oui, là, mais corrige-moi, de prendre, disons que si on avait 1,5 million à la fin de l'année, puis l'employer sur le budget de l'année prochaine pour au moins minimiser l'impact négatif du gel provincial?
Oui, c'est possible, puis ça va certainement être une recommandation qui va venir de l'administration. Il y a une des choses, il y a une petite chose qu'il faut quand même considérer, c'est que quand on utilise du revenu qui n'est pas du recurring revenues pour payer des dépenses qui vont continuer, ça peut créer un petit impact dans la deuxième année, mais c'est quand même, quand on parle de 1 million ou même 2 millions, pour nous autres, c'est un budget de 215, 235 millions l'année prochaine ou quelque chose de même. Ça va être correct.
OK. Mon autre question, c'est, tu l'as mentionné tantôt avec les POs qui sont pas encore consommés là, ou encaissés. On a un council contingency d'à peu près 1 million.
Oui.
Hein? Puis là, tu mets les dépenses qui sont encourues.
Oui.
Puis là, on a 1 million, puis c'est possible qu'on ne le dépense pas. Est-ce que ça pourrait s'ajouter? Disons qu'on dépensait 250 000 sur le million, il resterait 750 000 dans notre budget. On pourrait aussi ajouter ça pour le budget 2026, ou comment ça marche?
Oui, c'est ça. Donc, le council contingency, tout de suite, lui, il n'est pas rapporté dans ces données parce qu'on prend les fonds, on les met en réserve, puis ensuite, quand le conseil approuve les dépenses, on reprend nos réserves. Donc oui, absolument, même la council contingency pourrait aider aussi.
OK. So, lorsque vous allez revenir dans quelques semaines, un mois et demi, avec les débuts de prévision pour l'année prochaine, ces 2 facteurs-là, le surplus potentiel, puis dépendamment qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec le council contingency, pourrait être parmi les considérations pour l'année prochaine, étant donné la perte de revenus à cause de la province.
Absolument.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, M. Gérard. Merci, Mme la maire.
Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. Conseiller Légère.
Merci, Jacques. Merci, Madame la Mairesse. Just a couple questions. It's just a small amount, but I'm just curious on the, because in the past, I think the numbers have been greater, but the vandalism piece, there's about 23,000. And I'm just wondering if within that, I noticed that on St. George Street, there are a lot of the cameras that we installed that are no longer there. And the signs that are there, some of them are upside down that indicate that there used to be a camera. So what constitutes vandalism? And my second question will be maybe just highlighting the fact that it would be nice to have those cameras replaced, and how soon can that be done?
So I'll need to get back to you, but you're right. So for example, sometimes if there is, somebody tears down a camera, it may hit another budget line that we don't necessarily put vandalism, you know what I mean?
Right.
But sometimes if somebody breaks something just for the fun of breaking, so it could be certainly a coding issue, so I'll get more details on that. And the other question, I believe our chief would be in a better position to answer.
Thank you, Councilor Leger. I'll have to defer that to our IT department. I don't have an update on that.
It would be nice to have them replaced, because I know last year they were used. There was a situation where a large plate glass window was broken, and they didn't have cameras, but our camera was at that corner, and the RCMP used the film footage to be able to figure out what happened, and they were able to at least, put out a charge. So we spent a lot of time reassuring residents that we were taking this seriously, and so I would hope that in the next few weeks this can be done. And if it's a line item that's in IT, maybe Jacques, we have to look at that and like, why wouldn't that item be in public safety, so that if there's vandalism that occurs, then it's public safety that moved that item forward. It's IT that takes care of it, but I would hope that it's not IT that perhaps don't have the funding for it and are, but anyway, if you can look into it, that would be great.
We'll look into it, and I don't think that's the case.
Okay, all right. But they are very useful, and people are very thankful, so I think it would be nice to, and maybe get some reassurance when all that's done, Chief, maybe somebody to come back and tell us that they're all working and that that's there. I appreciate it. Other than that, I mean, yeah, it's the reality of what things are. I think that we'll see if there are any surprises. I'm a little concerned about Kodiak Transpo, though, overall, because their demands are so high on the system. And maybe at some point, it would be nice to get an update on Kodiak Transpo, where we are, what is happening with their ridership that continues to grow, how are they challenged, and what are some of the things that that we maybe need to consider sooner than later in their budgeting process. So, merci. Thank you.
Merci, conseiller Légère. Merci beaucoup, Jacques.
Bienvenue.
Excellent travail. Donc, pas de motion. Donc, le prochain item, Madame.
Prochain item is a public presentations. Conseiller Bourgeois wanted to discuss. Tu peux ton bouton.
D'abord, merci à Shelley de ramener ça. C'est quelque chose qui date d'une couple de mois, là, puis je crois que ça tombé entre les cracks parce qu'on n'a pas eu des réunions. Mais I raised this, and I hope it will be addressed during the procedural bylaw review, so I think it's covered. I won't be long. We recently had a case that we had an organization that requested a 5-minute presentation, but was refused a 5-minute presentation because there was already 2 organizations already booked. And somehow, somewhere, somebody decided that there would be a maximum of 2 presentations, public presentations. And at the last minute, one of the 2 groups, Shelley will correct me, canceled, but the other group that had asked for a 5-minute presentation was still not informed that they could have had 5 minutes, so they came in with 2 minutes. I think there's got to be a more flexible approach to hard rules about public presentations. We'll have that discussion when we have the procedural bylaw. but I think this is the citizens forum. Not to say that any group at any time can come in and 15 presentations an evening. It's very rare that we'd have more than 2 or 3 anyways, but we got to be a little bit more flexible about inviting the public to attend public meetings. So I would hope that in the staff's reflection before they come to council, they consider that this is a way for some organizations and some people to contact their community, their city, civic leaders, and maybe complain, sometimes brag, very rarely, but express their concerns. So we should treat public presentations as something very important, not just, all right, come in and go out and we only accept 2 per. This is the city citizens forum. So please consider that when you come up with suggestions on how to improve the public presentations within the procedural bylaw. Merci, Madame la Maire.
C'est beau, c'est tout, conseiller Bourgeois. Est-ce qu'on termine? Donc, conseiller Richard, merci beaucoup. Donc, bon après-midi, bonne fin de journée à tous.